Okay, guys, we are live. I wanted to start already, so 1 second while I put the display up here. I felt maybe it would be good if, 1 second, if I did get kind of a good stream going since I haven't done one in a while. So we're gonna talk a little bit about all of the scandals that have gone on this week with corruption. I hope you saw the Uyghur obnoxious cam broadcast from earlier that I had to upload. It was really a pain in the ass to upload, by the way. So I hope you guys did enjoy it if you did watch it, which I doubt it since it wasn't up very. It was only up a few, maybe like an hour ago. But I appreciate you tuning in if you are already watching. There are scandals, political corruption scandals erupting, especially in Canada and in Israel, that maybe we should discuss now, because why wait for a shoe to drop and then we have to catch up? So some of these I'm actually this effectively is catch up. So there is this this massive scandal in Canada, which people are saying will bring down the Trudeau government. So let's unpack it a bit. And it says here, the SNC Lavalin scandal rocked Canadian politics this past week, culminating in the resignation of Veterans Affairs Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould on Tuesday. But the scandal itself is complicated and has many implications. Here's a breakdown of the issues at play. What does SNC Lavalin do? It's an engineering and construction firm based in Montreal and was once considered one of the top engineering companies in the world. So, from what I understand, they had some incredible violations of sanctions over the past few years, including doing business in Libya. I think it was in violation of certain economic sanctions that Canada was included under. So it says its work has included government contracts, mining, transportation, and infrastructure. It gained a reputation for building a large dam in Quebec that spearheaded the province's development of hydroelectricity and for developing the skill sets for thousands of Quebec workers. It is still considered a crown jewel in Quebec, according to business experts. According to its website, it was founded in 1911 and it employs 50,000 people around the world, including over 8,500 in Canada. So at this point, I do want to say that this is a Streamlabs stream, so I encourage you guys to contribute. I'm going to put the Streamlabs link in the chat if you are interested. If I can find the stream. So, a second. So thank you, Shimu, for tuning in. I think you're a new subscriber too, so hopefully there will be more. It's been difficult to grow this channel. I think in general YouTube is pretty difficult to grow on right now, so I will put after the video posts links to my BitChute as well as the SoundCloud. I'm also on CocoScope, but I don't update it very often, so you can choose to subscribe to me there. I wish they did it more automatically. So it says, according to its website, it was founded in 1911 and it employs 50,000 people around the world, including over 8,500 in Canada. And the charges are, so this is from the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They charge SNC Lavalin along with its international division with corruption and fraud in relation with their business dealings in Libya. The RCMP said officials at the company attempted to bribe several public officials in the country, including dictator Muammar Gaddafi, as well as other businesses in Libya. RCMP officials said SNC Lavalin also lied to Libyan companies to defraud them of nearly $130 million. So they not only did business in Libya, but they were also cheating the Libyan governments or companies. If convicted, the company would be barred from bidding on federal projects for 10 years and current federal contracts would be in jeopardy. So we might play this global national video, but I want to keep reading. What is the Prime Minister's office accused of doing? SNC-Lavalin attempted to avoid a trial for the criminal charges, but in October, back when Wilson Raybould was Canada's Attorney General and Justice Minister, federal prosecutors refused to negotiate a deal under a newly passed remediation agreement regime. The remediation regime became law through Bill C-74 in June 2018 and would have imposed a fine in exchange for abandoning court proceedings. It allows corporations to skip a conviction and keep bidding on federal projects, which could protect the company from layoffs and financial troubles. In a bombshell report, the Globe and Mail alleged SNC-Lavalin lobbied the PMO's office, Prime Minister's office. It should say just PM office, but I don't know why they had to make it redundant. But to secure the remediation agreement. The report said Wilson Raybould was pressured to get federal prosecutors to change their refusal to negotiate remediation, but she was unwilling. Trudeau called the allegations in the Globe report false and said no one in his office directed Wilson Raybould to make any decision, but refused to comment when asked whether there had been any broader influence efforts. So let's watch some of this, okay?
Another big blow today for Canadian engineering giant SNC-Lavalin. The RCMP has laid criminal charges against the company, accusing it of corruption and fraud in Libya. Several former high-ranking directors have already been charged, accused of funneling money to the Gaddafi family. Investors are shaken. The company's stock fell 7% today. As Mike Armstrong reports, the company's future could be on the line.
SNC-Lavalin is being hit by two charges it hoped to avoid. Charges stemming from an investigation into its operations in Libya. Over the course of 10 years, SNC-Lavalin had several massive projects in the country. The problem is how they got them. According to the first charge, Libyan officials were paid off to the tune of more than $47 million. The second charge is an even bigger number. $129 million was funneled out of projects it's believed to pay off Saadi Gaddafi, the son of former Libyan dictator, the late Muammar Gaddafi. Now, several former company officials, including this man, the former chief executive, already face criminal charges over this bribery scandal and others. There are charges in Bangladesh over kickbacks and even in Canada. SNC-Lavalin is building Montreal's new English super hospital. According to police, the bidding was rigged for more than $22 million in bribes. The company reacted to today's charges with a press release, saying if something criminal happened, it was by, quote, former employees who left the company long ago. The charges are without merit, and the company will plead not guilty in the interest of its current employees, families, partners, clients, investors, and other stakeholders. Now that's the problem. According to this economics professor, police are going after the entire company instead of just the perpetrators.
You can't hold that whole mass of people responsible for the wrongdoing of 2 or 3 of its members.
Now, if the company were found guilty, it could face a ban on bidding on federal projects. Either way, observers say it's another blow to its reputation.
Well, what is going to happen is that it creates a small cloud over them, and as well, competitors are going to point out happily this cloud.
The way the company could be treated is more severe than if it were in the US or UK, where it would likely face just a ban. Ottawa added some new teeth to anti-corruption laws last year, and SNC-Lavalin could be one of the first to feel the bite. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
All right, so there's that synopsis. So it's apparently the whole connection to Trudeau owes to the issue of them trying to dodge any sort of accountability through, putting pressure on him. So it says here, SNC-Lavalin filed an application for review of the decision on remediation in October. Wilson Raybould was shuffled out of her position as Justice Minister and Attorney General and made Minister of Veterans Affairs in January. That's pretty harsh because, by the way, from what I hear, there's a lot of outcry in Canada from veterans of the Afghanistan war because Trudeau is also giving benefits to terrorists who came back from fighting with ISIS in Syria and Iraq. So it says here she later resigned from Trudeau's cabinet but stayed on as MP for Vancouver Granville. Quebec MP David Lametti replaced her as Justice Minister. The Ethics Commissioner of Canada is looking into whether there was political interference in the case. Gerald Butts, Trudeau's principal secretary and senior political advisor, resigned from his role on February 18th. He issued a statement denying interference in the SNC-Lavalin case. So here's some other. I think this is more about SNC-Lavalin. In 2011, an SNC employee whose job was to facilitate travel of SNC employees in and out of Libya was arrested in Mexico and accused of attempting to smuggle Gaddafi's son and family out of the country. The employee was eventually released from jail and not charged in Canada. In Switzerland, an ex-senior employee from SNC-Lavalin pleaded guilty to fraud, corruption, and money laundering in relation to his business in Libya. One second. Riyad Ben Issa acknowledged in court that he bribed Saadi Gaddafi, son of Libya's late dictator Muammar Gaddafi, so SNC could win contracts. The company was also banned from bidding on projects by the World Bank for 10 years over alleged misconduct during a bridge construction contract in Panama. During an investigation from CBC and the Globe and Mail, it was alleged there was an internal accounting code for bribes. Oh my God. That has to be one of the, wow. So essentially, this is literally like financial crime 101. You create a separate code on your accounting forms for bribery. That's amazing. Officials were charged with fraud, but they were acquitted after a judge threw out wiretap evidence. Closer to home, 3 top executives are also charged with bribery in relation to the McGill University Health Center. Former CEO Pierre Duhaime, along with McGill officials, pleaded guilty in the case. So they're a pretty corrupt organization. Now, the real question I think will be, will the Liberal Party of Canada actually stick by Justin Trudeau as he has to struggle with this scandal, which is, you know, people are talking, we're going to get to the Michael Cohen thing again soon, because yesterday I did kind of a breakdown while I was driving on the road of why a lot of the main points of the Michael Cohen testimony that I think showed that he was essentially so discredited and was continuing to discredit himself that how could you possibly believe him? In this case, this is the real test of media bias, okay? How is it that you have in the U.S. we have this case where, a person who's already been proven to be, untrustworthy, Michael Cohen, is believed and is believed even though he's not credible, and yet in Canada people are trying to, I don't know how hard the media is being on Trudeau, but I can assume it isn't as hard as people have been on Donald Trump, despite the fact that his justice minister or his attorney general, whatever she was, she doesn't have the same issues. She doesn't have the same credibility gap that Justin Trudeau does. So it's pretty ridiculous. And I will try to have somebody on next week to talk about it. If not him, then maybe, there's Adrian, who you've seen on the show several times from Just My Stupid Opinion. So, I think it is something to follow, because if people start to really look at it on a global level, a lot of these liberal democratic politicians, these ones that are, Justin Trudeau would be an excellent example. Theresa May would be an excellent example. Even though she's in the Conservative Party, her ideas don't have much to do with traditional conservatism. And for that matter, in many ways, she's kind of like a big government, just a big government person in general. She doesn't. This is something that even liberals, I think, would be against, like some of the ways that she abridges people's freedom of speech and stuff like that. So I don't know if there's a similar corruption scandal regarding Theresa May, but certainly her time in power has basically been clouded by her complete failure to accomplish anything. Now we're having corruption issues crop up, and generally you would assume that people who are people who are liberal would say, corruption doesn't really engender confidence in the government, even if the government gives a lot of services. If the government gives services that are tainted by corruption, and you have to play along and get along and whatever, the trust breaks down, and then the system itself breaks down, because the more the trust breaks down, the more people think they can get away with things, the more they think they can steal resources, and essentially this idea, the Keynesian idea that government can solve society's problems by taxing the rich and then creating a lot of social services, that falls apart, because when the social services are pilfered by the people who are in charge of them, or the people that are in charge of them start to take bribes, or they allow political pressure by corporations to influence them, then you see a loss of confidence, and that's the flaw in Keynesian liberalism. That's one of the issues that's happened over the years with what's happened in the U.S. There's a lot of these buildings in public housing or whatever where there's allegations that many of them were never built to be safe and never built to last, and they were built on the cheap and things like that. All of that is owing to the fact that the government is often willing to pay money to make a political gain, to make a political victory, even though what's being bought isn't really of high quality, because essentially the bill isn't paid by the person issuing the payment. The bill is paid by the public, and the public's voice is filtered through politicians and administrators and bureaucrats. It's not actually represented by them. It's filtered. When you have an opinion about anything, it's not represented by your elected official unless they find your opinion to be valuable. And they could find it valuable for various reasons. And if they find your opinion valuable because of certain favors that you do for them and certain things that you do for them, well, that could create a climate of corruption. So we'll move on to what's happened in Israel. I am a former IDF serviceman, so I did want to put that out there. But I never actually, I don't even think I had the chance to vote for Netanyahu, but I don't even remember. But even if I did, I never did vote for him because, to be honest with you, I think Israeli elections are also a joke in a different way from over here. So maybe we'll talk about that briefly a little later. I'm not sure how long I'm going to go here. Plus, I don't see a lot of you guys today. But, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was notified Thursday that the Attorney General plans to put him on trial for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust, following a 2-year investigation that has galvanized a serious election challenge and could speed the end of his political career. The draft indictment, while expected, sent tremors through Israel's political landscape, coming just 40 days before what's shaping up to be a closely fought election. It's the first time a sitting Israeli leader has ever come so near to criminal charges. Before any indictment is filed, Netanyahu is entitled to a hearing to present his side of the story and try to change Attorney General Avichai Mandelblatt's mind, a process that could take months. The Prime Minister, who cut short a trip to Moscow in anticipation of Mandelblatt's decision, plans to make a televised statement at 8 p.m. local time. "You have hurt the image of public service and public faith in it," Mandelblatt wrote to Netanyahu in his decision. "You acted amid a conflict of interest. You abused your authority while taking into account other considerations that relate to your personal interests and the interests of your family. You corrupted public servants working under you." So this doesn't really go into the charges themselves. Netanyahu has... So let's see if they're here. Okay, here they are. According to the draft indictment, Netanyahu took 478,000 shekels, or $132,000, worth of items such as cigars, champagne, and jewelry from Hollywood's producer Arnon Milchan. I think that's the guy. I think Arnon Milchan is the guy who produced Conan the Barbarian, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be hilarious. I have to look that up now. So he has, I mean, I think he's got to be worth like, yeah, he's worth $3.6 billion, and he produced 12 Years a Slave, JFK, Heat. Was that the Heat with okay, that one with Val Kilmer. Fight Club, he produced Fight Club, LA Confidential, which was great. But there were some other ones. Hold on. There was okay, Brazil, that movie sucked. Dizengoff 99 is a very famous film in Israel. So no, it's not that famous here. Big Man on Campus. That was a pretty good. That was a pretty big film. I don't remember if it was that good. Then you have Pretty Woman. A lot of huge these are some pretty big films. What's this one? Made in America with Ted Danson and Whoopi Goldberg. So yeah, this is a pretty big name film producer, and he gave apparently a number of gifts to Netanyahu. Netanyahu contends these were gifts from friends and is denied giving any favors in exchange. In the third case, Netanyahu and the publisher of a major Israeli newspaper discussed passing legislation that would weaken another daily in exchange for more favorable coverage. That would really suck for him. If that's true, I guess he deserves to be thrown in the shitter. The plan never came to fruition, and the bill languished in Parliament. Okay, that's if it never was executed. I don't know how the rules work. Netanyahu has said that he and the publisher are known Moses were just sounding each other out, and he had no intention of carrying out the plan they discussed. So the Moses family, for those of you that are not aware, they own the largest newspaper, the largest traditional newspaper in Israel, called Yediot Achronot. Yediot Achronot means latest news, latest knowledge, and it's basically, you can find it anywhere. It is the top tier. It's the New York Times over there, and I find this a little surprising since it's not exactly a super sympathetic newspaper to Benjamin Netanyahu over there, but the family that owns it are extremely powerful, and in fact, so let me see here. So Judy. So there's a woman, Judy Shalom Nir Moses, who was she's very powerful, and she was married to this guy Silvan Shalom, who was one of the most powerful ministers in Israeli government. So she's from the Moses family. Okay, she was also married to Amiram Nir, who was also a very powerful figure in a number of other Israeli governments. So yeah, this is a scandal that goes to the core of Israeli politics. You can't deny it. And her brother would be this guy Arnon Moses. Okay, that's why this sounded so familiar, and it's actually pretty. This is a pretty juicy thing. In any case, yeah, if he planned to do that, I say this, okay? If he even thought about doing this, yeah, people should vote against him. I don't know if it's a crime, but I don't think you can support somebody who is going to put his thumb on the scale for people who are the most powerful people in the country. Benjamin Netanyahu was very popular among the people there, but he is one of the people from the upper crust of society. He was born to a family that did have money over there. I remember reading his biography many, many, many years ago. And essentially, they were part of the right-wing Herut party, okay? And that was the predecessor of the Likud party. And most of those people were they were for private school. He himself, I think, was educated in the U.S. because his dad was a professor. I think it was at Cornell or somewhere in Philadelphia. Might have been Temple. So his dad, who was a historian, was essentially one of the preeminent right-wing thinkers in Israel back during the early part of the state of Israel. But at that time, they were out of power. Once the Likud did come into power, people like Netanyahu were essentially, they were elevated to a higher level than before, because before that, the Labor Party, it was known at the time as Mapai, the Israeli Workers' Party, they were the elite group in Israel. They were a more socialist party, but they did have their own upper elite, like ruling class of people. And they, since the late 70s, have kind of tailed off, and now they're not really very powerful anymore. And now it is the Likud and some of the people who are like leading members of it that are the country's elite. Okay, so people like Netanyahu, people like Judy Moses and her brother Arnon. Those are the types of people that are leading the country. So, yeah, I would say that based on what I'm reading here, it's absolute. I don't know why people would continue to vote for him. I don't know why he gets to stay in office. It is kind of a disgrace that he gets to stay. And now his point is always this, okay? If you want me to play, you know, to kind of argue from his standpoint, which is not very difficult to understand, Netanyahu's position is this: that he is one of the only people in Israeli government that actually is concerned with protecting the country from the threat from Iran and from other external threats. Now, those external threats exist, but sorry about the coughing, guys, but it is chronic. So I would say this, okay? Shielding your own political flaws and corruption because you happen to be one of the only people in your mind that is concerned with the country's security is not a real position. Okay, that's not a defensible position. You can look after both the country's greater interest without having to muddy the waters with your own like personal corruption. And Netanyahu has failed to do that. And he is pretty arrogant when he claims that all these charges are trumped up and nothing is true. Now, again, innocent until proven guilty, but if he did do this, then yeah, absolutely, I would say people should vote for somebody else. So, let me see here. The prime minister had moved up the parliamentary balloting from November in part to forestall Mandelblatt's decision. So that he's blatantly playing politics with the election. You know, although, you know, it sounds ridiculous to say that, but he's moving the election up in order to avoid his own indictment. He argued that announcing an indictment before the election and before his hearing could be completed would prejudice voters. And he has a point there. Others said voters deserve to have as much information as possible before the election and argued that it was Netanyahu's own decision to advance the vote that dictated Mandelblatt's timing. Israel in recent years has grown accustomed to seeing its senior officials investigated and even sitting in the dock. His last 4 prime ministers have all been probed, and that sounds pretty dirty, but and Netanyahu's immediate predecessor, Ehud Olmert, was sent to jail for bribery, though he stepped down while fighting the charges. Former President Moshe Katsav served 5 years in prison for rape. So I think it goes beyond that. Ehud Olmert is, I remember him. He was the prime minister when I lived there. And he had corruption charges against him for over 30 years. And again, he seemed to just escape them and nobody could touch him. And he always found some way to make him go away. And you know, people decided, well, you know, he didn't consciously break the law. Usually, I mean, there was even a case where he actually received envelopes full of money from an American donor. Okay, this I don't remember the guy's name. It was some dude that was basically this snowbird from Florida, And it was ridiculous. They had this prime minister who was like blatantly breaking the law. He was all the time, pretending that he didn't know what had happened, and people knew, you received friggin' envelopes full of money, okay? And eventually he did go to jail. And then before Olmert, there was also, and before Katsov, there was a guy named Itzhak Mordechai, who was the defense minister over there. And I know of him because he was the first major minister who was from Iraqi origin. I happen to be half Iraqi. So Itzhak Mordechai was accused and later convicted of multiple counts of rape against certain clerks that he had when he was in the army, female clerks. He was pretty much a sexual predator when he was in the army. So he went to prison for that over in Israel. Then there was who's another good example. There was Gonen Segev, who was a minister who was convicted of drug trafficking on behalf of the Hezbollah group. So there have been multiple corruption investigations against major Israeli public figures. And now with Netanyahu, if he was to be convicted, I don't see why people can accuse Israel of a lot of things. And I get it that they should be open to criticism, and people shouldn't feel that they're being bigoted in doing so. But I think this kind of it parries away one of the main points of attack against Israel. A lot of people like to say that these people are unaccountable, that Israel is basically, they're undemocratic, they're an apartheid state or whatever. The fact of the matter is that if Netanyahu goes to prison, his conviction would have to be upheld by a Supreme Court that includes an Arab justice on it. I think his name is Salim Gibran or something. And, the entire, in terms of governance, Israel is a fully integrated country. You don't have any I don't know about discrimination, but you don't have any legal exclusion based on race, religion, or gender. So when people talk about it being an apartheid country, you have to consider the fact that the person who's been accused all of these years of being the war criminal and the apartheid guy could go to prison for taking about $130,000 in gifts. And the people who would be, his jailers could be Arab, his attorneys could be Arab, his prosecutor could be an Arab, the judge at the trial could be an Arab. Any of those things could happen. I don't think that, it's possible. None of them will, but under the law, all of those positions are open to any person of any ethnicity or religion. Now, I guess technically he could file a motion. Oh, I don't want somebody biased at my trial who would, there's all sorts of things that could happen. But in principle, I think that this is a very important moment for the definition of this country as a democracy or as a free country as opposed to a dictatorship. It's not a country where necessarily people are, they have total freedom, but I don't know if there is a country with total freedom. I used to think that the Netherlands was like that because there were very few laws, and of course there's a very liberal drug and prostitution culture over there. But no, I think that if you want to point to a country where there is accountability, I think Israel would be an example. And the accountability doesn't make it perfect. If it was perfect, then you wouldn't have these corruption allegations themselves. But I don't think any country can make a claim for perfection. So yeah, please let me know, you guys, if you want to raise any more topics about this in the future. You can put them in the comments later, or you can put them in the chat now. By the way, my Streamlabs is in the chat if you want to tip me. So that's about it for today concerning the Netanyahu topic. I might have a chat on Sunday with a friend of mine from many years ago concerning like the Israeli election and politics. If you guys are interested in that, so we'll have you as Americans, or you as I have some followers from Canada and Britain. If you want to hear like a perspective of somebody from there, maybe tune in Sunday. I'm not sure the time yet, but I will set an event. So back to Michael Cohen. So Michael Cohen is basically, I think he's screwed himself even worse. Okay, and even CNN, Chris Cillizza, who's no friend of the Trump administration, says this: one simple lie by Michael Cohen could invalidate his entire testimony. Now, that's kind of a ridiculous statement to make, because what things that have been said cannot be unheard. And Michael Cohen tried to finger a number of people in the Trump organization, his company, and point at them and say, well, those are the people that would know about all of the dirty corruption stuff with him. Now, naming names and pointing fingers is not actually grounds for convicting anybody. And those people may be already prepared and ready to mount a defense and say, well, what Michael Cohen is saying is a lie, and these things are incorrect. And also, if it turns out that he did perjure himself this time again, then some of the subpoena validity by those people in the committee could be questioned. Now, I think that in the end, I'm no legal expert, I think in the end they could end up subpoenaing those people again. It says, Jordan, in his questioning of Cohen, sought to make that case, arguing that Cohen's decision to plead guilty and turn on Trump was due to the fact that you wanted to work in the White House, you didn't get brought to the dance. To which Cohen said this: sir, I was extremely proud to be personal attorney to the President of the United States. I did not want to go to the White House. I was offered jobs. I can tell you a story of Mr. Trump reading out Reince Priebus because I had not taken a job where Mr. Trump wanted to, which was working with Don McGahn at the White House General Counsel's office. So the surefire way that he could get into trouble for this would be if somebody had maybe an email or even a letter or a text message from Cohen asking somebody to try to get him into a job at the White House, in which case that would be perjury. And there were people that were tweeting over to what's his name, Meadows, saying that it's a lie and they spoke to him. Now, if that's a situation where it's, you know, one person's word against another, it's a he said situation there. I don't know if Cohen's necessarily in that much trouble, but he's still less credible of a witness than anybody else, because he's actually been convicted of lying under oath and bank fraud and making false statements and stuff like that. Michael Cohen's credibility is as bad as it gets right now. Okay, Michael Cohen probably couldn't. He has less credibility than somebody's dog who when you get home, you find the couch chewed up and you want to ask who did it. That's Michael Cohen's credibility. Okay. It says here, David Bossie, Trump's deputy campaign manager in 2016, tweeted this: Michael Cohen asked me to support his effort to be chief of staff when I helped run the presidential transition team. He perjured himself today. So it says here that these recollections in the grand scheme of things don't matter all that much. Sure, Eric Trump or Bossie can say that Cohen wanted to be chief of staff, but in order for Cohen to be proven as a liar on that front, there needs to be actual documentation that he lobbied for a White House job. What is more problematic for Cohen is that he seems to express considerable interest in going to work in the White House as late as November 2016, following Trump's surprise victory. Cohen told CNN's Chris Cuomo that he hadn't been offered a job in the White House at that time, but he certainly hoped he would be. Cuomo followed up by asking Cohen if he would take a job if offered. 100%, replied Cohen. So that could be the smoking gun, and he could be indicted again for perjury. Imagine that. So twice convicted of perjury if this turns out. Now, he has been, this is what I was getting at, he has been referred by the committee minority. So two Republican lawmakers who I happen to really like these guys. Now, I don't know a lot about their other politics, except in the case of Jim Jordan, who he's a congressman from my state. But you have to take into account that this is going to be very damaging for Cohen, because these guys have nailed a lot of people to the wall. I believe they were responsible for nailing Andrew McCabe to the wall because he lied to Congress. I don't know if it works the same way now that the Republicans are in the minority, which that by the way, if you're a person who who did not vote for Congress this year because you felt that, something, you didn't need to or something, but you supported the agenda of this administration, you must be feeling pretty dumb right now. Because if the committee were in the hands of Jordan and Meadows, this hearing would not have happened. Now, as it may be, it might be working out in Trump's favor that they had Michael Cohen on because the guy just appeared to be a disingenuous bastard. It was hilarious watching him, hem and haw and just stumble over his replies. And here it is. So two of Donald Trump's closest allies in the House Oversight Committee referred Trump's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, to the Justice Department Thursday for possible criminal prosecution, claiming to have evidence that Cohen committed perjury and knowingly made false statements to lawmakers during his day-long testimony Wednesday. The criminal referral sent by Ohio Representative Jim Jordan, the top Republican on the Oversight Committee, and North Carolina Republican Mark Meadows outlined several areas of testimony they urged the Justice Department to investigate, including Cohen's claims Wednesday that he did not seek a job in the Trump White House, his denial of committing bank fraud, as well as his assertion that he did not have any reportable contracts with foreign entities. So the last one is the one that I found like the most noticeable. He had omitted on his disclosure form that he had contracts with a bank in Kazakhstan that's owned by it's majority owned by the Kazakh government, Korea Aerospace Industries, which has, I checked yesterday, they're owned by a number of Korean government banks, and a couple other companies. So he's basically he lied on a form again after that's what got him pinched the last time. Okay, this is what's so ridiculous about him. I was extremely proud to be the personal attorney for the President of the United States, Cohen told lawmakers Wednesday. I did not want to go to the White House. Yet Republicans have pointed to court filings from prosecutors in the Southern District of New York that stated Cohen privately told friends and colleagues, including in seized text messages, that he expected to be given a prominent role and title in the new administration, an assertion Cohen said Wednesday was inaccurate. So if those text messages were entered into evidence by the Southern District of New York, then he would be any sort of plea agreement that he would be arriving at with them. If they cut a plea agreement with him, it's clear that the Justice Department is working in tandem with him in order and come what may in order to get at Donald Trump. Okay, this doesn't have anything to do with whether Trump is guilty of anything or not. This has to do with the credibility of a witness. Okay, and if a witness makes false statements under oath, their credibility is compromised. But I've had people argue with me. Somebody argued today, well, you apparently think that Trump is a saint and whatever because you never talk about Donald Trump's lies. None of his lies are under oath. Now, should he be lying? I don't think so. I think that there's certainly an issue in terms of, when people consistently lie in their private life to people that they know, of course, those people can make a judgment that this person can't be credible and you shouldn't trust them. So I'm not expecting people to trust Donald Trump implicitly. I think people have every right to criticize him as dishonest for things that they think he's lying about. And yeah, he has lied about a number of things. But we're not talking about that. Lying under oath is a totally different category. The system of justice, there's forensic evidence, there's documentary evidence, there's all sorts of different types of evidence. If you're a lawyer, you would probably know a lot more about it than me or some of the other people in the audience. But if you are watching somebody testify in court and give evidence, and then you find out later that he was lying, then the entire system comes into doubt. Okay, when you have people who finger other people for conviction, you see these mafia trials where people are basically ratting each other out. In the grand scheme of things, that might be like the most ridiculous system of that might be the most ridiculous system of justice. That's why you need documentary evidence. That's why in many cases you need forensic evidence. That's why sometimes you need things like videotape, audio recordings. And Michael Cohen didn't have any audio recordings that were useful to prove any of his allegations yesterday. He only had his own personal word, and that word is worth nothing because he'd already been convicted of bank fraud and making false statements on legal documents and lying to Congress. All of those things come into play when you have somebody testifying under oath. So it says here, they're continuing. Mr. Cohen's testimony is material to the committee's assessment of Mr. Cohen's motive to monetize his former association with President Trump, Jordan and Meadows wrote to the Justice Department on Thursday. It is essential that the Department of Justice investigate these remarkable contradictions between Mr. Cohen, the SDNY prosecutors, and the public accounts of witnesses with firsthand information. A spokesperson for the Justice Department said it is reviewing the referral. Lanny Davis, Cohen's attorney, called it a sad misuse of the criminal justice system with the aura of pure partisanship. So Lanny Davis, who was an attorney for the Clintons, thinks that this is an aura of pure partisanship. It says here, Mr. Cohen testified truthfully before the House Oversight Committee. He took full responsibility for his guilty pleas. He also backed up much of his testimony with documents. It may not be surprising that two pro-Trump committee members known have a baseless criminal referral, Davis said in a statement Thursday. Meanwhile, some Democrats have suggested that the claim Cohen perjured himself is misguided. House Oversight Chairman Elijah Cummings, a Maryland Democrat, told reporters he believes Cohen's claim that he didn't want to work at the White House. It's ridiculous that he would say that. So he says, I don't have any knowledge of that. He said he wasn't lobbying for a job, and I believed him. Cummings said, I mean, think about it. He could have made a hell of a lot more money outside the White House than in the White House. I mean, I don't know why you would want to do that. Representative Jamie Raskin also, so that doesn't really take the situation into account. Cohen at the time was in financial trouble anyway because he was with the whole taxi medallion scam, and taxis are making much less money than they used to. So I think he would have probably wanted a job at the White House because it would have been a source of income at a time when his own personal sources of income were not really working so well. It says here, Representative Jamie Raskin, also a Maryland Democrat, told CNN's Kate Bolduan and at this hour Thursday morning that the line of questioning from his Republican colleagues was an irrelevant distraction and everything Cohen said was perfectly internally consistent and coherent. Sources have told CNN, however, that Cohen was angling for a job in the White House, but was sidelined by members of Trump's family. So even CNN is saying that it has sources that say that Cohen was trying to get a job in the White House. One person described Cohen as having become disenfranchised in the early months of the Trump administration, but that he nevertheless continued to portray himself as Trump's go-to guy. The president also suggested Cohen join the White House counsel's office, but former White House counsel Don McGahn said Cohen didn't have the necessary experience and background to work there, and Trump dropped it. Jordan and Meadows also claimed that Cohen's testimony that he never defrauded any bank was intentionally false, given that Manhattan prosecutors specifically referred to Mr. Cohen's crimes of making false statements to financial institutions as bank fraud in a footnote of his plea agreement. So yeah, that's also true. If it's already in an indictment and he pleaded guilty to it, he can't dispute it. There was actually, this happened with Dan Lasseter, who was a Clinton associate back in the 90s, who he disputed the fact that he had been indicted on drug trafficking charges back in the, I think it was in the 80s he was indicted. And he claimed that what he was doing was not really drug trafficking, since he was giving people free cocaine and stuff like that at parties. And that it was shot down immediately because the committee chief said, well, I think it was Senator Al D'Amato said, look, you can think that giving somebody else drugs in exchange for money is not drug trafficking, but the documents, the court documents and the indictments say otherwise. Cohen pleaded guilty to making false statements to a financial institution, however, not bank fraud, and prosecutors have not alleged that any bank lost money. The GOP lawmakers additionally accused Cohen of lying about his contacts with foreign entities. a point highlighted by Meadows at Wednesday's hearing, Cohn said he would review the form and amend it if necessary. So that's not going to be good enough, because if he did that at the hearing and people, he filled out the form the same day as the hearing and he omitted that, then that's also a fraudulent statement. They could nail him to the cross for this. And the fact is that Michael Cohen is such a disgrace. Hearing him at the committee, hearing him use all the time the fact that he was the son of Holocaust survivors was personally infuriating for me. Because here's a guy who's been convicted. He's admitted that he's a fraud. He's admitted that he's snookered a bunch of people financially and institutions, and that he gave bad legal advice, and he's been disbarred. And he wants to bring up something that is happened to somebody else, and he wants to bring up, oh, my boss was racist and stuff like that. Look, there's no reason to believe you about anything. So why take my heritage and use it to help with your defense? Michael Cohen it's like unbelievable listening to him. It's almost like listening to somebody who's he just tries to find more soul to sell every single time. And that's about it. I think once that referral is processed, it's a good question who's going to be handling it. If the Justice Department itself will be handling it, the Justice Department being the new Attorney General, William Barr, and possibly a new Deputy Attorney General, then I think he could be really screwed, because those people have no need, they have no commitment to the Mueller probe. And if what happens to Michael Cohen is that he gets into even more legal trouble for this, then any future people who might want to come forward under the Mueller probe might find this as an this is just an example. Okay, I don't know if this is, you can take this as a bad thing, you can take this as a good thing, but of course if you're a Trump supporter, this would be a good thing. But if people start to realize that if you go and try to speak out against Donald Trump, you could be held accountable if you lie to Congress and perjure yourself, then this could really hurt Mueller's probe, because he's trying to get people to snitch on Donald Trump. And it's not really happening necessarily. With Michael Cohen, he had to snitch because a lot of the crimes he's talking about you're talking about are things that have to do with his personal business, with the taxi medallions, with loans that he's taken. So yeah, this is a real interesting angle to take a Russian collusion investigation, a real valuable use of our government's time. So that's about it. Please like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Subscribe to me on BitChute and on Cocoscope and on definitely donate to me on Streamlabs, but also on SoundCloud if you prefer audio. And I'll talk to you guys later.